In the last class, we have seen what are the different ways to create a thread. Okay, we have seen what are the different ways to create a thread, and we have seen the thread priority modifiers. We have seen the thread priority modifiers. Let's go and learn let's go and learn the thread class. Let's go and learn the thread class, the constructors of thread class. Okay, so if you want to create a thread in Java, okay, so you have to either use the thread class or runnable interface. So thread class. So if you want to create an object and create a thread in Java, so you have to use a thread class. Okay, so thread class will be having the four constructors. These are the main important constructors. Thread, this is a default constructor. The first constructor is a default constructor. Okay, so with this constructor, we can create an object of thread class whose default thread name is 0. Okay, we can create an object of thread class. The default name of this thread is thread 0. There is a one more constructor, thread of string, another string. Okay, so this constructor is, okay, this is caps. So this constructor is used for creating a thread, and we can give the user specified name. So here we will be giving the user specified name, or we can say the thread name. Okay, so here we will be using the default thread constructor to create an object of thread class. And if you are using this constructor, the thread name is thread 0. And if you want to give the name for a thread, you can use this constructor, thread of string, another string. Okay, so example let's say example example thread thread t1 equals to new thread of, I'll be giving the thread name. Okay, so I'll say my first thread, my first thread. So now you are setting the thread name. When I say sort of a t1 dot get name, okay, get thread name, so it will return, or get name, so it will return. So when I say t1 dot get name, it will return the thread name, which is nothing but my first thread, my first thread. So here we haven't set any thread name, right? So if you are calling um, thread name, let's say this is a t thread, t dot get name. So this will return thread name as thread 0, thread 0. Okay, so the constructor one is used to create an object of thread class. Okay, so by default the thread name is thread 0. If you want to create a thread if you want to create a thread by giving the name of by giving a name to the thread, you'll be using this second constructor, which is thread of string, another name. Okay, if you want to see the a name of a thread, you'll be making a call to the get name method. Okay, t1 dot get name, which will return the name of the thread which we have given in your constructor. Okay, the third constructor is thread of runnable. Thread of runnable. See, this constructor is used for converting runnable interface object into thread object. So we will be using this constructor to convert the runnable interface object to thread object. Okay, so why we are doing that? To call the run method of runnable interface, to call the run method of the runnable interface, by making use of start method. See, runnable is an interface, is one of the interface which will be used to create a thread. Okay. So, but it won't directly create it. So there should be an implementation class actually. So in runnable interface, there is a default method called there is a method called abstract method called run. Okay, so you will be overriding this method. In order to run this method, you should be using a method of start method of thread class. So when I say t1.start, at that time, this thread internally makes a call to the run method of runnable interface. Okay, fine. So thread of runnable constructor is used to convert the runnable interface object into the thread. Okay. So, and why we are doing that? To call the run method. See, runnable interface object cannot be created directly. Okay. So we have to give an object reference, interface object reference to the class, so that a class object will be created using the runnable object. Okay, using the runnable interface. And when we are calling t1.start, so it will be calling the runnable method of uh, run method of runnable interface. Okay, the fourth constructor, thread of runnable and if you want to give the thread name, you can give the another name. You can give the thread name. Okay, so this constructor is taking the runnable interface and the thread name as a parameters. If you want to provide a name for a thread, you can give the name. And if you want to give the runnable interfaces as a object as a parameter for a thread, to run the run method of runnable interface, so you'll be using this constructor. So these are the four constructor. Let me give overview once again. So we have a thread class. So thread class will be used to create an object of thread. Okay, so we have four constructors to create an object of thread class. First constructor is used to create an object of thread class. If you're using this constructor, the default name of the thread is thread 0. And if you want to get the name of thread class, so you'll be saying t dot get name, because get name is a non-static method you should be calling with respect to the object name. Okay. So let's say that you have created something like this thread t equals to new thread. Okay. So now by default, if you want to get the name of the thread, you'll be saying that t dot get name. It will return the default name of the thread. Now you don't want to set the default name for a thread. You want to directly you want to set the name of the thread by calling a constructor. So there is a constructor called thread of string. So which will be taking the thread name as a parameter, which will be taking the thread name as a parameter. So when you are giving the thread name, it will override the default thread name to given thread name. Okay. So when you are calling t1.getName, so it will be giving the first thread. So why we are giving thread names in the sense, in order to differentiate, like threads will be, so multiple threads will be simultaneously executing it. In order to see which thread is executing, which thread is executing first, which thread is executing second, in order to see that, we will be giving the names for the thread. Okay. So then we have a thread of runnable constructor. So this constructor is used to take the runnable interface as a parameter, and what it does is it will be executing the run method of the runnable interface. So how it will be done? How it will be executed? By calling the t1.start method. And there is a one more constructor, thread of runnable comma thread name. So this constructor is used to create an object of thread class by taking the runnable interface and the thread name as a parameter. Okay, based on your requirement, you will be using these constructor, any one of these constructors. The instance methods of a thread class, which we have already seen this one. So instance methods of thread class. So we have a two methods actually. Okay. So one is the set name, which will be taking the string thread name as a parameter, string thread name as a parameter, and this will not return anything. So it will be void, and it is a public. It is a public, and it cannot be changed. Once you, it cannot be changed. Final. You cannot change the name once you define it. So public final void set name, public final string get name. Okay. Set name will be used to set the thread name. Get name will be used to get the name of the thread. So if you are not, see, for example, you are using the default thread, default constructor of thread class to create an object of thread. Now you want to set the thread name for this T. So you can use T dot set name, and you have to give the name of a thread. Let's say my second thread, something like this. Okay, fine. If you want to get it, you have to use t dot get name, and it will be changed from thread 0 to my second thread. Got it? So these are the two instance methods we have. Okay. So these two methods will be used to set and get the name of a thread. Okay. So there is a one more method we have. So that is in thread class, we have a one more method, that is a run method, which doesn't do anything, void, and is public. Any Java program or any Java programmer wants to define a logic for a thread, you have to define inside this thread class. Okay. Whenever you create an object, whenever you call t1 dot start, okay, let's say for example, okay, this run method will be executed every time. You have to define your own your logic, whatever the logic you want to execute. You have to define the logic you want to execute over here in run method. Run method. Let's say, I want to print 10 to 10, 1 to 0, 0 to 10 numbers. I'll say thread. So I'll say, I'll create a class. Let's say a extends thread. Okay. And I'll say, I'll be overriding the run method. I'll say for loop int I equals to 0 semicolon I less than 10 I plus plus. We'll be printing 0 to 9 numbers. Okay. Now I'll say SOP println. I'll say I. So it will be printing the values from 0 to 10. It will be printing 9 values, 0 to 9. Okay. So now this is a public void run. So now I want to execute this logic. So if I want to execute any logic, so I have to write inside the run method, right? That's what I have done now. So let's come to my main application. Let me create an object of thread. So there are different ways we can create an object of thread class, right? One is using the thread. Different ways, right? We have seen here, right? Different ways to create a thread class. One is directly create an object of thread class. Okay. This is the way, directly using new operator. The second one is using a factory method, and third one is using a subclass of thread class. Okay. So subclass of thread class, what you have to do now? You have to create a subclass. So what is a thread class? What is a subclass over here? A. This is a super class, right? This is a subclass, right? So let me create an object of that. A small a equals to new capital A. So when I say a dot start, it will internally make a call to the run method, and this will be executed. Okay. The start method is used to make the thread to start the execution. Okay, so whatever the execution logic you have specified in your run method, so the thread will start executing that logic. Okay, even if you write any method also, for example, let's say I'll do one thing, I'll take this one, I'll write a simple method to print the statement, print numbers 1 to, I'll write plus square 10. This is my method. Okay, so it will create a public void print 1 to 10 numbers. So it will call this method. Here I'll take my logic. Okay, so this method will be called, and here it will be going to execute. Okay, let's see an example on this one thing. Let me create a simple package. So where I'll be giving the package name as thread operations, thread operations. So I'll be creating a class. Let me give the class as my first thread, my first thread. Okay, so my first thread, which extends the thread. Okay, java.lang.thread. Okay, what I'll do is in thread class we have a run method. Find this run method. Constructor we have thread of run target runnable. There is run method. Start method we have, and we have a run where it is. Yeah, we have run method. So we will be overriding this method. Okay. So now come here. So let's override run method. So I'll provide my logic, print statements, print numbers, and write print numbers. Okay. So I'll be creating method, and here for loop int I equals to 0 semicolon I less than 10 I plus plus. Okay, it is 1 plus plus, not I plus plus. I plus plus. Okay, SOT of I, and I want to print the 1 to 0 to 10 numbers. Okay, so up to 9 it will print. Now let's go and create our one more package. I'll make it as client, thread operations dot client. Okay, so I'll say first thread client app, my first thread client application. Okay, fine. So inside this, what I'll do is I'll be creating an object of thread subclass. This is a parent class, and I want to create an object of this class. Okay. Me use inside the main method, we have to write it. My first thread equals to, let me use my first thread. So I'll say first thread. I'll first get the name. Okay. I'll write some sysouts. First, I'll get the thread name. My thread name is. My thread name is first thread name. First thread name. First thread dot get name, right? To get the thread name. To get the thread name. Now after that, what I'll do is I'll call first thread dot start method. When I call start method, then only whatever the logic we have written inside the run method. So sorry, what is the logic which we have written inside the run method? Okay, it will be executed. Otherwise, it won't execute. Okay, so let me run this one. Run as, sorry, I have to run it as a debug as Java application. Okay, run as debug as Java application. Let's see. Yeah, see here, my thread name is thread 0. What I told you, if I am not setting a name for a thread, by default, it is saying thread name as thread 0, and I am printing 0 to 9 numbers. So after printing this one, it is calling the run method of run method of my run method of my first thread class, right? It is calling this method run method. Inside run method, we have written one method print numbers. So it is coming over here and it is executing these statements. Okay, fine, cool. Any doubts? We have seen a thread name. If you are not setting the thread name, by default, it is giving the thread name as thread hyphen 0. Now, if I am setting the thread name, I'll say my thread name is, let me directly set it over here. I'll say first thread dot set name. I'll be setting the name for a thread. So I'll say thread 1, right? Thread hyphen 1. Okay. Oh, what is this? Okay, okay. Something I missed it. Okay. I'll know one thing.
This one won't
No,
return
it
any.
will it will
This
print
is
it. It
void,
will
right?
print
Like
it. Let
first
me
thread dot
write it
set name.
over here. Let me. I'll just give the, because it doesn't return anything. I'll just say first thread dot set name. Okay, now I'll say first thread dot get name. Now let's see what the thread name it will print. Now we have set the thread name, right? So now it will print the thread name run as Java application. So now it will print the thread name. See here, my thread name is 0. Before we set the thread name, it is the default thread name is 0. Now we have set the thread name to thread 1. So now it is saying that my thread name is thread 1. And it is calling the run method of my first thread. Okay, fine. So that's all about this start. That's all about like what we have discussed so far about the start method, run method, and we have seen the set name, get name as well. Let's see the next one. Let's see the next method we have. Okay, in the next video we'll see the next method.